Hey everyone, this is Tony Holbein. You are listening to the Revenue Formula with Mikkel and Tony. In today's episode, we are discussing why CS is not a profit center and why there might not be a quick fix. Enjoy.
Great intro. That was a perfect intro, though.
I don't think I have it in me.
So for the dear listener, someone forgot to push a button. And
That person isn't called Tony.
This might be the first person ever who forgot to push a button. And we're just even talking about how it was on a pip. So, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I'm just going to take another... There's another strike here on your outlets.
But actually, just to recap, we just spoke about the fact that we had a summer party.
Yes.
And what I was really looking forward to was getting out on some boats. And
where
sail.
where you're looking forward to this.
Yeah, I actually was, because we had a nice...
He's such a boat guy.
We had had a nice lunch. We went to a cafe to play board games. Weather was kind of okay. It wasn't bad or anything. And
by the way, yes, we went to a cafe here to play board games with a company.
Yeah,
Isn't
exactly.
that insane?
Yeah.
I think it's insane.
And then we played a pub quiz, and some random guy just joined the pub quiz because that's the culture there.
I felt it was like Olafur's older brother or something like this.
Just Irish, though.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, we go down to the pier, and all of a sudden, it starts heavy raining, heavy winds.
Yes.
And we were just talking about how you could see the boats. Literally, I think it would take maybe a couple of minutes to go, 2 kilometers down with the tailwind.
Yeah.
But then watching the go boats try and return and make it back safely against the wind. And those boats, they don't have a lot of power because anyone can sail them. They're electric. That was the point where not doing that.
So literally, I kind of still remember there was an image in my head, right? So the wind is gusting like crazy. The boats are basically, not moving because the engine is so super fucking weak. And, someone was trying to come under the bridge.
Yeah.
Like, it's a proper bridge with, cars on top and everything. And they were basically kind of clawing along on the wall with their hands to try and kind of move the boat forward. But, yeah, that didn't work. So then we skipped on that. And then instead, we went and had beers.
Exactly. Any sane person would do.
Like any normal summer party.
Yeah. And where did we have the beers? Outside, because now the weather was kind of okay again.
Yeah.
And now it was done. That was done. So actually, we had a perfect segue. And maybe you want to take the perfect segue.
No, I forgot. I mean, you're just the segue guy. Literally, Mikkel, this is your only qualification for this job here, is you being able to, sometimes, not all the time, create great segues.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's fair to say they didn't probably turn a lot of profit that day because I think they got a lot of cancellations. Oof. They got a lot of cancellations, right? So what we want to talk a bit about today...
I'm feeling it.
So what we want to talk a bit about today is CS isn't really a profit center. We wanted to talk about why CS is a profit center and how to do that. But I think you and I talking for 10 minutes. Yeah, it is recording. You are good. You and I talking for 10 minutes. We kind of realized that it's actually
it wasn't recording. That's what we realized.
Yeah. Quite often it's not a profit center.
Yes.
And that's what we're going to want to get into.
No, so on the things that we were about to kind of prepare an episode on hey, the right side of the bow tie and all this revenue there, it's so important.
Yeah.
And, why are people not focusing on this? And you should. And you just need to tweak this one thing just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Compound
interest.
Yeah.
Boom, hockey stick right there.
$1 trillion.
And then the thing is, right? So, I mean, I've been a CEO myself twice. And guess where I didn't invest? Into the CS side, all that money. If we were to talk to my VP CS, she would tell you exactly that story. She was like, Tony, you were kind of terrible with this. And today, we, instead of, doing another rally for CS and how it needs to get more money.
We got to prove that old VP wrong.
Yeah. we're gonna talk about at least what made me hesitate.
Yeah.
Which I also think is what makes a lot of other folks hesitate to pour a lot of money into the CS team. And, maybe this reverse way of talking about it might help some people to be like, you know what, actually this one problem, I think we can fix it like this. And then you go off and hopefully kind of improve your business.
Yeah.
In any other situation, at least you can go, to bed at night and be like, you know what, it's fine. Other people are also not investing money into this. It's okay. It's okay.
So Winnie by Design has an old research paper on CS. It's literally called CS as a profit center. And in it, they outline some of the, let's say, the challenges that occur in a company. And one of the classics is, CEO, CFO, they need to cut costs. Our CSMs, they can carry a third more accounts. We can totally distribute more. And that means we can cut the team and it's all going to trickle down to the bottom line. It's beautiful efficiency, right? But there is a reason I think some of the folks think like that. That's not being addressed. And we're going to get into some of that now.
Yes.
I think one of the first points you also made was like, well, how many deals are there really to upsell here?
So I think the first thing, right? And I think for those thought experiments here, which we're all kind of doing sometimes without knowing it, it's really interesting to kind of look at it from the extremes. Yeah. So let's just say you have 100 customers, 1,000, I don't know, whatever the number is, and you're able to upsell 10%, like every year, whatever. Really, the thinking here needs to be, okay, if I never change that number, if I, it's always going to be 100 accounts, like always. How long will I actually be able to upsell 10%? Like, how long will that be able to kind of keep going, right? Because at some point, it's, thinking about it, at some point you will have reached the account potential of every single of those customers, right? So very clearly you can't do 10% into infinity with this thing. Kind of there's a reason behind this, right? So, and then trying to understand, well, if there are diminishing returns, right? Because maybe you can upsell one account once. Maybe you can do it twice, but can you do it 5 or 6 times? I just don't believe that, right? Kind of, unless it's one of our customers was Uber in 2008.
Yeah.
Or Snowflake in 2011 or something like that. Yes, sure, you can keep up. And, don't get me wrong. But in reality, most organizations, most accounts don't necessarily grow like that, right? Yes, you have some situations where you are not wall to wall and you can jump through different departments. But trust me, this is not easy either, right? So there are kind of some reasons. So kind of the first thing is that, when you think about it, like, well, how many deals will there actually be in the account base that we have, right? So, and then kind of pouring more resources around it might kind of feel like not the right thing actually to do here.
I think the other thing also we had was Dan Steinman on the show, godfather of CS. And he was very adamant that, CSMs should act as SDRs. But I think going back to a summer party scenario, when I've interacted with a CSM versus a SDR, very different profiles, very different approach. And I can see lots of cases where the CSM is like, man, do I want to take some chips off the relationships table now by asking, do you maybe want to buy one more user?
So what Dan Steeman, just kind of to protect his legacy, what he said was, yes, CSMs need to act more like sellers and SDRs, but they also need to be great CSMs and great AMs and great everything. So there's a lot of expectation built. Kind of, he said, a CSM is doing their job if they're kind of renewing customers really well. But if you want to get promoted, you need to be upselling customers really well. He was pretty clear about this. And the thing is, and I think there's also a little bit of a cultural divide. I think in Europe in general, sales is not seen as a honorable job. Right? It's not.
No.
Like there's no one coming out of, a college in Germany and be like, ooh, I want to be sales. Like no one is doing that. And so it's really bad reputation, right? So I think there are many people actively trying to mold their careers not to ever be in any kind of I'm selling something situation, right? So, and I think that bleeds into, for example, CSMs that are customer facing, but shows that path specifically because they didn't want to do any selling. And then if you then come to them, it's like, well, I need you to do sales now. Then they're going to be like, no, I actually really don't want to.
Did I pick the right career track?
Yeah. And the next thing on top of this, which is, and by the way, the reason I'm saying this is different in the US.
Yeah.
You have like people coming out of really good colleges. Sure, some of them go into finance and consulting, but actually there's a bit of a culture of like, hey, it's a good, base education to understand how to sell stuff. Right? Because I think Americans looking at this, well, in reality, when are you not selling?
Yeah.
But you're like, really, when are you not, even your private life? When are you not selling kind of an idea, not necessarily, a product or something, but when do you want to get your point across? You're kind of selling.
It's like, honey, if I clean up the kitchen, can we open a bottle of wine, please? It's like, you're always doing it. And I read about a company, funny enough, where part of the onboarding, whatever department you're in, you had to close 2 deals in 2 weeks. That was like part of it. And I was like, dang, that's intense.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think even if you're sitting in marketing, so this is like going off script here, but even if you sit in marketing, you just got to realize how much you're going to learn from just running one deal. Try and running one deal, see how much pain, how much struggle, how hard mentally that job is, and also see what happens in the process.
Yes.
It's going to change a lot for you.
I think so too.
But speaking of kind of the sales side, I think you had another interesting point, which was like, wow, we have whatever expansion we have. Now imagine that you 10x the amount of CSMs you have. Are you going to get more expansion out of it?
So that's kind of the other thought experiment. I actually kind of want people to kind of think through. It's like, okay, let's just forget about the fact of reducing your CSM team. Let's forget about that fact. Let's just go in the opposite direction. What would happen if you 10x'd it? What would happen if you suddenly had 100 CSMs for 100 accounts?
Yeah. Yeah, they would get pretty bored probably.
Sure, but almost to my point.
Yeah.
What, would they really get more upsells out?
Yeah.
Like that's really the question you need to ask you. And obviously, sure, oh, Tony, obviously not 10x, but just as a thought experiment, if every single account had their own CSM, would they get more money out of these accounts? And some enthusiasts will say yes, for sure. And I think that's probably true. But is that going to be in proportion at all to anything, right? And that actually leads me to, the next thing here, which is, I think in order to solve this puzzle a little bit for yourself, you kind of need to figure out where is upsells, where are they actually coming from? How does that thing actually work? Like in a bottom-up fashion, right? I think number one, yes, you need to help customers to achieve the upsell, and you probably want to do that by way of having the CSM do a great coverage, them getting a lot of success from the product, maybe having the CSMs in a level of like, teach them some sales skills, like selling not in the sense of, here you need to sign on this thing now, but selling in the sense of doing discovery questions.
Yeah.
That's, I think, actually...
And even pitching, actually, because they're going to have interaction with...
No, but it's like, it's almost like, you have a series of discovery questions, first level, second level, third level, kind of figuring out, okay, this is what you're doing, and this working out for you, no, blah, blah, blah. And then you can always say as a CSM, without this being a pitch, like, hey, did you actually know that we can also help you with this?
Yeah.
And we're doing it like this and like that. And, a bunch of our customers really love it. Do you want to check it out?
Yeah.
Right? Kind of, you can do it in an extremely soft way, right? Kind of those skills need to be taught to those CSMs. And so then this is kind of the facilitating part of trying to achieve the upsell. Then there's the other part of like, where's that stuff actually coming from?
Yeah.
Right. And I think, the way I think people should be thinking about this, number one, is there something to upsell here?
Yeah.
Like, do you have pricing that lends itself to upsell anything?
Yeah.
And, sometimes that's true, sometimes not. Kind of in some of our cases, they were just like, oh, you can have another user or two for a team that never has more than 3 people anyway. So the company needs to expand a lot.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Yeah. Or just 2 licenses per user.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then it's kind of really difficult to generate those upsells, even if some of the usage expands, right?
Yeah.
And I think the whole pricing and packaging piece is obviously kind of extremely important here. Another one is like, well, are you selling wall to wall, or do you sell to one department and can branch out from there? And if you go through this whole list and really think through, in your cases, how do you actually sitting there, you might actually come to the realization that like, geez, I don't think there's that much to upsell here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, there just isn't.
And I think that's probably also an issue even before that. Like, have you instrumented the right stuff to monitor and manage that side of the funnel? Do you really have the insight like you do on the sales side to manage that side? I would also question in some cases whether that's actually happening. Regardless of all these wonderful issues and brain teasers we've now done, that's actually not the biggest problem though.
No. I think, and this is the question that my VP of CS hated the most, which is really, I asked her literally, give me a reasonable way, let's just forget about CAC payback, but give me a reasonable way how I can convince myself that it would be better to hire a CSM versus hiring an SDR versus adding more money to ad spend versus, I don't know, doing something else on the new biz side. Give me like a reasonable way for me to believe that, right? And it's shitty because it's extremely difficult for the CI side to prove this thing, which is kind of also proving that they are kind of a little bit further away from the money at the end of the day, right? Kind of it's difficult, right? And all of these things together, if you take all of these little problems that we just mentioned, right? And if you were to apply that problem set to the left side of the bow tie, to your go-to-market, to the acquisition, like sales and marketing, people would immediately go, oh, you don't have go-to-market fit.
Yeah. No, they would. Or even worse, product market fit.
Yes, exactly. Yes. But what I think we want to bring up here, and just make this clear for people to kind of realize this, because this is very clearly a multidimensional puzzle, right? If you tweak a little bit here, like, oop, this other thing doesn't work anymore. And kind of, you need to figure out how to put those pieces together. And let's remember, what was the definition of go-to-market fit? Well, it needs to be, done scalably. You need to do more of it. It needs to be done repeatedly. Like, you need to be able to, create an opportunity repeatedly and close it repeatedly. And you need to be able to do it sustainably, meaning, your CAC payback or CAC facility or whatever needs to be in the green, whatever green means.
So not one account per CSM is what you're saying.
For example.
Yeah, good.
For example.
No, I just want to make sure.
And what I think is simply true, and most, if not all of those organizations, of which there are 99%, by the way, those. Us, basically, all of us organizations that are struggling with the upsell side, I would basically say, folks, we probably don't have upsell go-to-market fit.
Yeah.
We probably don't have it. We probably not. We don't know where to spend another dollar to get another dollar out. We don't understand, does it mean more CSMs? Does it mean more AMs? Does it mean more product?
Yeah.
Do we need build more, do we need to expand our thinking and actually put, our CAC dollars into product instead to get more revenue? It's like, we honestly don't know.
No.
We don't have a fucking clue. And, we have a little bit of a clue maybe on the sales and marketing side. And I think, why is this? Well, there might be some lesser, there's just fewer brain cells being focused on this problem, I think. There's also a company focus issue, kind of what is most important to you and so forth, right? Don't want to kind of, diminish this. But ultimately, it's a really difficult problem that needs to be figured out.
Yeah.
And once it's figured out, I think then you will see wonderful net retention rate.
Yeah.
If you kind of land at the point of like, oh, actually, you might figure this out and land at the point we can't upsell.
Yeah.
Like there's, it cannot be done. We would need to do all of those changes and maybe then execute them. But you can also arrive at a point where you finally see the matrix. You get it.
Yeah.
And you know exactly this, and this is what we need to kind of invest in for this thing to go up. Right?
Yeah.
And I think getting there, some really successful companies have achieved this. I think is ultra difficult.
Yeah,
I think it's ultra difficult.
But it's also very compelling from a business case perspective that you initial deal value is X, but it ends up being Y. Just from being able to go and raise your competitiveness on the new biz side.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a bunch of upside. Let's talk a bit about how would we go about finding go-to-market fit. Because it's easy for you and I to sit back in our ivory tower and say, well, it has to be repeatable and scalable and durable. Just go do that, right? How would we actually go about it, right? I think my hunch is definitely if you don't have go-to-market fit on the expansion retention side at the moment, then forget about durability in the short run, right? That's not the problem to solve first. There is something around the repeatability, probably, that you have some level of predictability, that hey, if we create this amount of apps in this amount of time, it becomes expansion MR.
Yeah, I think, and honestly, folks, we haven't figured this out either.
No, we're not.
This is not
experts.
like, well, we are the experts apparently, but like this is one of these issues that is extremely difficult, right?
Yeah.
And
even on the new biz side,
and yeah, of course, but just the inverse is also kind of difficult. Just figuring out why people are churning.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of this is an individual project you need to kind of do in your company to figure out what's going wrong, right? And I think lots of people have invested lots of money in trying to figure out what is, why is a customer churning, right? And what happens there usually is you start with a list of snowflake reasons. Like everyone has their own reason why they're leaving. Sometimes they're lying about it. Sometimes they're honest about it. And once you kind of wiggle this down, you kind of figure out, hey, there's like a cluster of reasons, and the cluster is not true for every customer. It's actually you can start seeing that, I don't know, price is too high is for the SME, and you can see like customization options is like the reason for the bigger ones and so forth. But this is your way towards trying to kind of crack the code, right? And instead of doing this in a negative way, I would encourage people to do it in a positive way. So why are those customers successful? Like this is now the retention side basically. And then you can, also ask yourself, well, what would need to be true for them to buy more?
Yeah.
Yeah. Going about it in this way. And then, it can be like, oh, see there, they weren't aware that we had this offering.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, the CSMs need to be more, proactive about telling them what's going on, or there needs to be some marketing resources for the CS side or whatever. It could be that, the person in the account that is aware of you has zero interest in the other problems you can solve for maybe his colleagues or the other department.
Yeah.
So what's the answer to that? Well, it's probably more of like an account management SDR kind of job.
Yeah.
To start multi-threading into the account and, talk to the other department, because very rarely in big organizations will you have the ability to just ask your champion to like, oh, can you introduce me to those 20 people in the organization? No, they're probably not, it's their reputation on the line and blah, blah, blah. They're probably not going to do that. So you need to do that proactively around them, maybe with their consent, maybe not. You need to figure this out. But, that could be another way how to kind of bridge this, right? And then ultimately, and this goes back to pricing and packaging, can you connect them using the product more to charging more?
Yeah.
And the issue here is, if you're only doing this on a seat basis, that works fantastically for, the high volume roles.
Yeah.
Like your SDRs, your AEs, your CSMs, AMs, stuff like developers, high volume roles where, I need to log into Salesforce.
Yeah.
And now I have 5 more sellers, and now I need to have 5 more seats, right? That's the thing. If you're in a different ball game where it's not really volume of the role that makes sense, but something else, you would need to attach yourself to a different, people say it's a value metric.
Yeah.
And ideally, this will make them pay more over time. And sometimes, you know what? It's just not possible.
Yeah,
it's like, it's just, no, I'm not going to have like a flexible thing going on here. I want to pay in this, in that way. And you know what? If that's true, then that upsell door is kind of closed for you, right? And that's how I would, start trying to break the whole thing down.
I think the other reflection going around in my head is also the PMF side. Do you actually have additional solutions that they need and want? Honestly, there's lots of companies that have some add-ons and additional product you can buy, but it's just totally uninteresting, either because the price is out of whack, or it's like, oh no, it's enterprise and that's just not what we need. We don't need that SOC 2 and a dedicated, like we don't need it, right? So the TAM is super narrow. Versus if you look at, let's just say accounting software, people will buy that to invoice and manage their bookkeeping and stuff. But at one point they need to do the annual report. Easy upsell. They need to do it anyway. They probably go elsewhere to get it done. For us on basically producing this podcast, we have a software we use to cut the episode and run all the post-production. They also sell a live studio for you to record guests now. Natural, like we are using another solution, to be honest, but we could have used that one as well. That would be a natural upsell, right? So the question is also really whether folks think a bit about, well, sure, we can do a big pricing and packaging exercise. We could do like Tony and Mikkel said, like do a expedited service tier at additional cost or something. But you could also just ask yourself whether you have product on the shelf that has product market fit that people then want to go and buy.
And so two maybe anecdotes and stories. So a good friend of ours, Jesus, he was also on the show actually. And this was, we were just chatting about one of his previous gigs the other day, which was Algolia, I think. And whatever they do, it doesn't matter actually right now. But when he joined, they were kind of doing 20, 30K kind of tickets, were kind of good. Churn was kind of not in the right direction. And then they just started laser focusing on only the accounts where they're 50K. Like, what is it that separates them? Why are they paying us 50K? And why are they happy through the roof? And what else can we do for them, right? So what they then achieved is that they took those accounts from 50K to 150K, like over a fairly short period of time. And, while they understood now, as the value basically for them increased and kind of they basically built new products for them to then adopt and buy and kind of made their happy customers even crazier happy. Then on the flip side, Jesus, kind of a marketing guy actually, kind of used those insights to try and actually basically only acquire those kind of customers, right? So they went from having, 20-ish K-ish kind of deals like la-di-da to actually kind of getting these things in 50K and then tripling the value kind of over 2-3 years time, right? So the code can be totally cracked, right? There are many ways to kind of get there. And I don't think everyone can repeat this Algolia kind of way of doing it, but it can totally be done, right? So this is anecdote number one. Anecdote number two is actually when Mikkel and I were working at Falcon.io, Falcon Social, now Brandwatch. So the thing is actually, we were looking at the, gross retention, net retention side. We were never really great at this thing. Our gross retention was not in the right spot where it needs to be. Our net retention never got above 100, right? Kind of, that's just what it was. And we were looking at this like, it's just because this social media management thing and these marketers, they're just flaky as F. And that's just what it is.
Yeah.
Can't really, cost of doing business. Can't really do anything about it. And then those Sprout Social guys went public. And as they go public, they also need to disclose some of their metrics. And we saw that they had 150% net retention. And we're like, how are they doing that? Because they actually were way more SMB. Usually say like the more SMB you go in, the more churn you will have. But they were, we were mid-market, they were SMB, and they had better net retention numbers than we have. Now we all know how you can, fudge those numbers a little bit. And we took it all with a grain of salt. But ultimately we had to recognize that they had figured something out that we hadn't. Like they had figured something out. And this goes to show us like you might be sitting there in the management team is like, can't do it. Impossible. Laws of physics. Laws of nature. Can't do anything. The cost of doing business. But it might also be true that one of your competitors is right now figuring this out. And that's gonna screw you really hard. Sprout Social IPO'd, and I think they're like, I don't know, $1 billion or $2 billion in market cap. I'm not sure where they are. If that would have happened to Falcon, I would be sitting here right now.
You'd be on the beach.
I would be somewhere else.
Yes. So I think actually maybe just to bring it down to the dumbest level I can, what we're saying
that shouldn't be that
hard. What we're saying is basically either you have a problem with what to sell, this is the product market fit, or you have a problem with how to sell it, the go to market fit. And you can go and look into those areas to kind of figure out, hey, where's the problem? What can we do to kind of figure these out? And that was the whole idea, to kind of provide just a different way to look at this whole area.
Really think about it as a go-to-market fit issue for the CS side. And when you talk to like revenue architect, diehards, and Jacko and stuff, they will say that's obviously included in the go-to-market fit definition whatsoever anyway, kind of to have both of these things figured out. And yes, they're all right. But I'm just saying kind of look at the upsell issue from a lens of we just haven't figured this out yet. And there's a go-to-market fit issue that we need to address here in order to kind of get what we want to upsell to do that repeatedly, scalably, and profitably. Right? And it probably can be done. And the thorn that should be in the back of your head all the time is like, well, just because we haven't figured out doesn't mean that our competitors will.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And hit like, subscribe, love, share.
Write a link to review.
Send it,
text your mom.
Or your wife.
Yeah.
Or your boyfriend, or whoever. And let's kind of keep growing this mission here. Thanks everyone for listening.
Bye.